Hey guys, it's Paige and welcome back to my channel, Hauntingly Vintage. Today, we are going to be talking about one of the most known worldwide haunted buildings. And if you've taken a look at my shirt, you've guessed it, Waverly Hills Sanatorium. So this massive 5-story, 180,000 square foot building has so many residents lurking in its corridors. But before we get started, let's start with its history. So starting all the way in 1883, a man by the name of Major Thomas H. Hayes bought the land that Waverly now sits on for his family. And back then it was in the most of like the rural part of, I guess, Kentucky. And they decided, since it was too long to take his kids to school, he decided to build a little stone house, I guess, or building to create a schoolhouse. He then hired an educator that went by Miss Harris. Sorry, I'm always gonna say that. Miss Harris, to educate his children. And she was very fond of an author by the name of Walter Scott Waverly and his novels. And she asked Mr. Major Hayes if she could name the schoolhouse Waverly Schoolhouse. So that is how it all came to be. He eventually liked the name so much, he named his whole property Waverly Hill. During the 20th century is where tuberculosis had a major outbreak and peak of its existence, really. And so the Board of Tuberculosis Hospitals was created in 1906, and they were looking for a place or a piece of land to build or put residents to where, because they couldn't be in regular hospitals. And if you don't know what tuberculosis was, or better known as TB, it is a bacterial infection and it mainly impacts your lungs. So it causes a lot of fluid buildup and it really damages your lungs. So if you had tuberculosis, your odds back then were not very good. There was not a cure for tuberculosis, and they actually thought that sunlight and natural fresh air would help cure it. However, it really didn't, unfortunately. So a lot of people died during this time of tuberculosis. So that was the start of the building that we now know today. Its first wooden structure was an administration building, and it had 2 wings. It had a men's and a women's, both housed about 20 patients, and that opened up in 1910. So after that, they realized that it was not gonna house everybody that was so sick. Like probably within a month, it would not have been able to hold how many people were actually needing to be there. So they decided to reconfigure a new building, decided to, I assume they kept it open or maybe closed it during the renovations. And the now building that stands today that we know as Waverly Hills Sanatorium was open in 1926. It housed 400 patients, and it was one of the largest hospitals that took care of or treated tuberculosis. It was basically its own community. They had their own produce, they had their own butcher, they had laundry services, everything that you can think of to self-sufficiency, like a small community, was there. When you had tuberculosis, they did have to, that was basically the first kind of pandemic in a way. They had to quarantine you basically, and when you were a patient, you didn't get visitors, you couldn't leave. So it was kind of an asylum, if you really think about it that way, for a lot of people. And that's why there's so much negative energy, or I guess sad energy, in that building, because of how many people actually died in Waverly Hills. But Of course, it did not stay closed very long. It opened back up a year later in 1962 as Woodhaven Geriatric Center. This nursing home only lasted until 1982 due to the state shutting it down. The story is a policeman who they were doing their state inspection was not supposed to go to the 4th floor. He wandered and got on the wrong floor in the elevator, and on that floor he found so many patients chained to their beds. He saw them emaciated and malnourished, and obviously that is not humane. Why would you have people in that condition? And that's why they got shut down, obviously. So once that was closed down, eventually the land, that was the last thing that ran inside that building, full functioningly. Eventually the land was sold in pieces. At one point it was supposed to be some type of religious kind of building, but they did not go through with that, as well as there was word about trying to make it into a minimum security prison for the state. That did not get approved, and the building does now have an owner and has had one for years, but it is mainly ran by the Waverly Hills Historical Society. They deem that place a historical landmark. They were wanting to tear it down and probably use it for real estate. Who knows? It's on a hill. I mean, there's not much you could do. It's a very pretty building, but now the Waverly Hills Historical Society does a lot of the event planning. They do take donations to try to keep, that's how they work on renovating Waverly Hills and keeping it up to being able to do investigations and just having the public out there to see this massive building. But now that we've pretty much covered everything on the history side that I'm aware of, if there's some other things, please let me know in the comments down below if I left out anything important. But now we are going to get into the fun part, and that is Waverly's residents. Waverly Hills is most known for the 4th floor and their shadow people. But before we start talking about the 4th floor, which they are most known for, and their shadow people, we'll start with the 2nd floor. And the most known room on that hall, or that floor, is the sisters' room. There were 2 sisters who ended up getting tuberculosis together, and they were able to live together on one of the sunroom sides. So on the building they have a front and a back, and on the front side there is windows and sunlight, and it's really, that was basically for the side that you have a fighting chance to beat tuberculosis. The ones on the back side, the rooms were smaller, they didn't have a lot of ventilation, and they were basically your terminal, and most people knew if they started on one side and went to the other, they weren't going to make it, or vice versa. You would always hope to start on one side and end out on the other, or stay on the healthier side of things. But the 2 sisters' names was Lewis and Audrey. Many people will leave little gifts. They have a room set up, their room set up for them with a bed and like a little table, and people will leave little trinkets, little gifts, flowers, just to honor the sisters that still reside there today. In March, when I went to Waverly for the investigation, we got some really good evidence with the flashlight method. And if you're not familiar with the flashlight method, it's honestly, I bought these flashlights off of Amazon. That's the only place I could find them. They're used for ghost hunting or paranormal investigations, but honestly, they're just the old, probably 80s, 90s look to them. How you turn them on is you twist the head of the flashlight, and to turn it off, you twist it back the other direction. So the flashlight method, you twist it just enough on to where if you were to tap the top of it, it will turn on, and if you tap it really hard, it'll turn off. And let me tell you, I tried to do this just randomly at my house to tap that light on, and it is very hard. It's harder than what I thought it was going to be. So for us to get a really good yes and no responses with the sisters, or in the sister room, was kind of really cool to me anyway. especially being that only being my second investigation ever is going to Waverly Hills, and just seeing how hard it was to actually communicate. And we don't know for sure if it was residual energy or if we were talking to one of the sisters. We do believe we did communicate really well with one of them. Now, which one we did was kind of unclear. So hopefully if you ever do get to go to Waverly, you will get some good feedback and some communication from those residents. Now moving on to the 3rd floor, which I think is where the operating room is at. Not too for sure, don't quote me, it's either the 3rd or the 4th floor, but that room is the kind of key highlight point on going onto those floors. The operating room is known for and has a really big steel door that connects that room to another smaller room, and that door is known to slam shut. Now when I say a steel door, I mean it is very heavy. I tried kind of pushing it and it wasn't moving. So whatever resides in that room is, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it has a lot of energy to close that door. Now, of course, the operating room, of course, during some of those procedures that they thought would help tuberculosis patients didn't go as planned. Some patients probably died on that table, so who knows who really stays in that room. But the tour guide, when she was giving us a tour, she did let us know on one of her day tours she does not like to stay in that room for a very long time. On her day tours, she was kind of giving the tour itself, and she had a lady scream in the middle of her tour, and it kind of set her off, but she didn't want to address it right then because she didn't want to embarrass the lady. So she decided to ask her at the end of her little spiel of the room while everyone was exiting, and asked the lady if she was okay. The lady told her that she got scratched, and so the lady pulled up her shirt, and sure enough there was scratch marks. So that room is known to be physically touched or scratched, so I don't think it's a very light energy in there or nice at that fact. But I'm sure the spirits from time to time do get annoyed with people coming in and investigating. Sometimes they do want, I'm sure, their peace and quiet, and most people that go in and doing these investigations are trying to be respectful when poking and prodding and asking questions of the spirits that reside there. And now to the 4th floor, which is the most infamous floor of Waverly Hills Sanatorium. It is best known for its shadow people. Now you will get a little bit of everything on this floor, from EVPs, from voices being caught just like as you're walking down the hall. You probably will get some footsteps behind you. So just kind of keep that in mind. You're not alone on that floor. It is also known for what they call the creeper, and it is a shadow figure that likes to crawl on the floor, crawl up the wall or up on the ceiling, and drop down in front of you. So I did not experience that. I did not investigate the 4th floor. I stayed for merely probably 10 minutes at that, besides the actual tour itself. And that is something I did not experience, but would like to in the future. Maybe not the creeper, but just a shadow figure was fine with me, kind of different. But moving up to the 5th floor, and the room that's most haunted there is room 502. Now the 5th floor did house, on one side, adults that had, I believe it was tuberculosis of the brain, and then on the other side was the children's ward, or on that side they did have a playground for the children that they could play, which was on the roof, because the 5th floor is the top floor. So not sure how safe that actually is. But the 5th floor is most known for room 502. And the story is it was a bathroom, and their story goes is that there was a nurse who either hung herself or was murdered and made it look like she committed. Now, They do believe that she was pregnant, and it was out of wedlock. So we're not too for sure if it was or if it was from the doctor, because I believe the doctor was married, or they might have both been married, and it's obviously not a good situation. So there is theory out there that the doctor killed her and made it look like she committed. She was found by, I believe, a custodian or a security officer, and that's how that story has become to known. There is no record of it on Waverly Hills archives. There's no record of her death. The only way we've known that story was true is I believe there was somebody who used to work there in Waverly Hills at the time when it happened and kind of confirmed that story. We will also get a lot of EVPs or during the Estes method saying he hurt me or he did it. Whether or not that kind of lets us know if the story's true or not. I mean, it does put some evidence behind it, but we won't ever really truly know what happened to her. Among the Waverly Hills corridors, there is one other spirit that is known there, and his name is Timmy. He was a little boy who had tuberculosis and ended up dying there at Waverly Hills, and he is best known for playing with balls. So if you roll a ball or set a ball on the ground, it is more likely to be moved, and that is him doing it, or more majority of the time it is him. And or if you push the ball toward him, he will roll it back to you. So didn't experience any of that, but that is something to keep in mind when you go to Waverly Hills. Take a small little childlike ball and see if you get him to play with you. And last but not least, we are going to go all the way down to the bottom into the, I guess you could say, basement, to the morgue and to the body chute. The morgue, of course, is going to be haunted because that's where all the bodies went. They do have an ice box or ice cooler. I don't know how you say that. It's the tall white ones. You put the slats on, you kind of push them in. They do have one of those still down in the bottom that you're more than welcome to investigate. I took a picture in one, and I will post it here in the little video. They do not mind you doing that. They do not mind you investigating down there either. I was a part of an Estes method session. It was not mine, it was some other people in the event, and we were getting some pretty good evidence down there. It made a little bit more sense to them. They were getting really good evidence all night, but it was still really cool to see other people going under the Estes method. If you don't know what the Estes method is, it is sensory deprivation. You put a blindfold on, you have noise canceling headphones connected to a spirit box. And a spirit box is a little radio device that flips through thousands of channels at a fast speed, and every time a word gets blurted out clearly, or as best clear as you can get it, it is a spirit putting forth its energy into that device to talk to you, and the person acts as a conduit for that spirit and repeats everything from the spirit box that they hear. The noise canceling headphones and that blindfold help with when people are asking, other people will ask questions, and then that's hopefully what we'll get answers for. That's what they help with the sensory deprivation. So there's no gimmicks, there's no fraud in the evidence. You're blindfolded, so you can't read lips, and you have headphones on. So, and most of the time we do make sure that you cannot hear the person quite asking the questions. And the question person, I guess I should say question master, does not speak too loudly, so the person under makes sure that they can't hear, and so nothing's frauded or nothing's gimmicked in that sense. But as I said before I started rambling, I was part of an Estes session. Oh my goodness, I can't talk. I was part of an Estes session, and I will post that girl's link down below. She has her own YouTube channel. She did a part 1 and part 2 of Waverly Hills, so go check her out, and I'm in there featured, but I'm not talking, so I'm sitting there observing. But yeah, still check it out. They were getting really good evidence they actually went both nights of the event. I was only there one night, but they were getting both really good evidence the first and the second night. And to them, I mean, it just makes complete sense kind of what they were getting. It was really cool to experience and to watch other people investigating. And I highly recommend either going as a group or doing a group event, because it is really cool to, as an amateur, I mean, I'm a beginner on all of this. So going in it with people a little bit more experienced than I am, seeing how they do things and how they get spirits to kind of communicate, it's really cool to get different ways to communicate with the dead. But now the last place that we haven't talked about yet is the body chute. The body chute is a tunnel about 500 feet or about a mile long under Waverly Hills, and it was used as a way to transport goods. So like shipments or produce, anything like that, they would send it up the chute or back down the chute, and that's how they just got things delivered, because it can't be in contact. You're in a tuberculosis hospital, so it's like I said, it's kind of like quarantine. And so unfortunately, with so much death that was happening around all the patients, they did not want to down their spirits with a bunch of bodies being trudged through or wheeled down the hall. So they decided to use that transport system as what is now known as the body chute. They would send bodies who have passed down under so other residents wouldn't see so much death, and hopefully help their positive outlook, trying to heal and not think about that could be me next. But this building was so massive. The pictures just don't do it justice. Walking up or driving up to Waverly Hills was a dream. It was the highlight of my year, and the fact that I won the tickets to the investigation was even crazier. So I will hopefully be able to go back maybe sometime this year. If not, it will be a yearly trip for me. I do live in Texas. Me and my sister drove to Louisville, Kentucky as like a little road trip, so it is like a 13-hour drive for me, and I don't plan on doing that again this year, but I would hope to do at least a yearly trip to Waverly Hills to talk more to these spirits and see, the more you go to these places or the same ones, they do sometimes recognize you. And I think that's really cool that they're able to do that. I mean, there's so many people probably walking through that building a day, let alone recognizing who you were or that they've seen you before. It's kind of really interesting to me that a spirit can still have a memory like that. And with that being said, that's all I have for you guys today on Waverly Hills Sanatorium. And I will be linking down below the paranormal investigators that I won the tickets from. The group name is called Haunted Nights. They are on all social media that I'm aware of. Thank you, Dylan and Steve, for doing the giveaway and the random generator that picked me to win the tickets. I loved investigating with you guys. I will definitely try to come out to more events. Hopefully you will come further on the West Coast than you are the East Coast, or come to Texas at least. But other than that, and I also will be linking my new friend Marina, who I was in her little clip of Waverly Hills, her part 2. She did a 1 and part 2 of their night of investigation. She was there for the event, so I will link her YouTube channel down below as well, and kind of check it out, see some other evidence that a couple of other people got from that night. And they did get some really good evidence, so I hope you guys enjoy that. But with that being said, please don't forget to like, subscribe, turn notifications on. I will hopefully have another video for you guys soon, hopefully next week. If not soon, don't hold me to it. But with that being said, stay spooky and happy hauntings.